Hi, everyone. Hey, Frederick, Urs, Rochelle, Harry, Torbjörn, Marco. Good to see you all. I'm going to read a little bit from the book today. It's a lot of pressure and stress today because today is the final deadline of every single little thing to get the book ready for printing. So I'm under pressure because I've made a few little changes here and there. And we're off to Cairns in North Queensland next week to sit with Willie, the graphic designer, and finalise everything for the layup for the book. The printer we've been in touch with. A little bit of drama because with the COVID, the printers had tremendous trouble getting the correct paper stock on order out of China, but that doesn't matter. It won't be too long. Yep, TGIF indeed, Herman. Hey, Daniel. How are you? So I'm going to read a couple of sections from the book. One of them is the 11 mottos of Masayama, but we know those. Us, Paddy. I enjoyed that interview with The Voice, mate. That guy can really talk. It's just, I remember years ago I saw an interview with Barry White. You know Barry White, the singer of those really amazing. They reckon more people have what's the word? More people alive were conceived listening to Barry White music than any other music in the world. And the guy said to him, the interviewer said to Barry White, you could make anything sound sexy. So he gave him the instruction book for a fridge and said, read the first paragraph of this. And Barry White reads the first paragraph out of an instruction manual for a fridge. And it's like he's singing the most beautiful love song. Well, that's what The Voice is like, man. That guy could just say anything and it sounds incredible. I mean, he just, we're talking about the voice of One and the voice of K1, and, he's done everything, Mike Chavello. And, he could do the same thing. He could read the first paragraph out of a refrigerator instruction manual and you'd get excited. You'd want to go and buy the fridge, He's quite amazing. And it's been a lot of fun working with him over the years too, when I used to do a lot of refereeing. Paul Higginson, good to see you, man. Thanks for coming. Raj Kumar, namaste, all the way from Nepal. So anyway, Al Bellamy, how are you? Damien, good to see you. So let's get cracking with this. The voice behind the bio, Mike Chavello, yeah, the big kibosh and good night, Irene. That's right. I wonder who Irene is. But anyway, and what he said was true, the whole idea that you can actually just jump on a microphone and do what he does is a little bit like saying you can get behind a Formula One car and not crash it at the first hairpin bend, I've actually done a little bit of that announcing. And before I did that commentary, I went and listened to Mike Chavello thinking that I might learn something. And I learned one thing is I've got no chance of ever doing what he does, and you try to, the guy's playbook would be worth $1 million, but anyway, it was a lot of fun. So if you haven't heard that, everybody go to Paddy Pinto's Kyokushin Shuffle and listen to that interview with Mike, the Voice Chavello. It was a lot of fun. So I'm going to read right now. I'm just going to read. Mike Lorden, good to see you, man. And Tigray, yep, indeed. I'm going to read a section now from the book. It's an expanded section on the 11 mottos of Masayama. And I've introduced that chapter 4, with a quote from Yogananda. The performance of worldly activity without wisdom gives rise to an unquenchable thirst of longings for attachments to material objects and egotistical satisfactions. The man who acts for selfish reasons becomes deeply attached to bodily activities and desires. And I think that one chapter kind of sums up Masoyama's 11 motto, one paragraph, one sentence, two sentences, sums up Masoyama's 11 mottos. So the 11 mottos of Masoyama, the following 11 sayings are known as the master's Zayu no Me Juichi Kajo. Zayu just means, by my side, that sort of thing. And it means the 11 famous mottos by my side. These sayings, combined with the Dojo Kun, form a concise but profound philosophical base for Kyokushin karate. Oyama, whilst widely known for various physical feats, was above all else a spiritual man. His primary objective of bringing Kyokushin to the world was to teach that Budo was a spiritual path, not just an efficient way to fight. His strongest influence, Sonei Chu, was a devoutly spiritual soul whose life centered around his Buddhist principles, his Buddhist spiritual practices. Oyama left us numerous texts, not just on the technical aspects of karate, but also on the psychological and spiritual objectives of the martial artist. The masters of all styles and arts overwhelmingly confirm that Budo is a spiritual path. I had an interview online yesterday with the son of Ninomiya Joko, Michael Ninomiya, and at the beginning of the interview, he said that one of the books that he read as a young man that influenced him a lot was Masoyama's book, The Kyokushin Way. And that primarily, The Kyokushin Way, is a book on the spiritual path of life. Us, Dave, Avola, Rob, good to see you, man. Us. Shugyo. Essentially, what separates Budo from sport is Shugyo. When one trains in sport, the primary aim is to win the event, to go faster, jump higher, be stronger, and score more than the opponent. The psychological and spiritual benefits that are definitely attainable through sport are secondary and incidental to achieving personal bests and breaking world records. In a sporting competition, and that includes karate tournaments, the simple goal is to win. The widespread abuse of performance-enhancing drugs for the purpose of ensuring victory, which in turn leads to endorsements, wealth, and many other worldly rewards, is proof that when it comes to winning in sport, nothing else matters. I remember I read about a survey in 1992. Us, Mike, good to see you. And Paul from Germany, welcome. And Kenneth, us. I remember a survey, 1992 Barcelona Olympics, a blind survey. Athletes were asked if you could win a gold medal, if you could take something that 100% guaranteed a gold medal, but meant you'd also die by 35, would you take it? And over 75% of the athletes said yes. So they're more willing to die by 35 than they are to lose a gold medal. And you've only got to look at it's sad, but it's a real indictment, the number of great athletes in all sports who die very young. And if you follow it through, you'll find that overwhelmingly the number of times that people die in their 30s and 40s and so on has a relationship to their abuse of performance-enhancing drugs. Us, well done. Good to see you, man. When we hear the interview. Look, I don't think it's come out yet, Tigray. He said he'll let me know when it goes up on YouTube. I'll make sure I let you know here too. So, the biggest thing in life for me is I've, other than enough times drinking when I was 18 or 19 to know that I never want to do it. Other than that, I just realized I lost the cap to my pen. Other than that, I had one or two drinks. I never drank again after my 19th birthday because I realized it's a mug's game. I never smoked, never did drugs, and what I'm saying is, it only takes a little bit of thought to think, it's a bit silly doing these sort of things. But you know what? Performance enhancing drugs is the ultimate. That's how desperate you are that you feel you need to take some sort of drug to win, because at the end of the day, you're not winning anything. It's your drug-enhanced body that's doing the winning. Okay, so let me just read that last sentence again. The widespread abuse of performance-enhancing drugs for the purpose of ensuring victory, which in turn leads to endorsements, wealth, and many other worldly rewards, is proof that when it comes to winning in sport, nothing else matters. Budo is different. It is primarily a spiritual pursuit rather than merely a sporting or physical one. The goal of the physical mastery is to serve the end. The goal of physical mastery is to serve the end. For many who have no thought of a spiritual reality, karate training is aimed at nothing other than winning. I'm going to have to highlight that. That didn't make sense. This is what I'm driving Willie nuts. I've discovered these little things. For many who have no thought of a spiritual reality, karate training is aimed at nothing other than winning tournaments and becoming an effective fighter. And there's nothing wrong with that. Let me get this straight. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that if that's your objective. And for some people in some countries who don't have any other way to make ends meet, what a fantastic way to do it, doing something you love. That is definitely a legitimate aim. It is not, however, the highest aim of karate. And I've got a quote here. This quote is from actually a friend of mine, Thomas White. My sister introduced him. He was a Shotokan instructor, Sensei. Thomas wrote a book called 3 Pearls on a String, and it's a really nice little book. Anyway, karate is not separate from work, family, or society. What is its merits without meditation? In the scheme of evolution, which is the greater task? To control the body or control the mind? There is, after all, a distinction between the chariot, and the charioteer. Carrot. See, I've got a few mistakes in this. Check my Leo. Good to see you. Works, greetings, Leo. Thanks for coming. Shugyo represents the spiritualization of work, whether it is your training in the dojo, the work you do to provide for your family, or your service to your community. A simple shift in the mind can turn every action into shugyo. The word is borrowed from Buddhism and finds its roots in the Sanskrit term sadhana. All religious and spiritual paths have a similar term when referring to the necessity of being disciplined in our daily spiritual quest. And the immediate spiritual needs of everyone is unique. So we will find that at different stages on our spiritual journey, different aspects of the teachings will have greater significance to us at different times. We are all on this spiritual journey, so how you choose to go about it is up to you. As students of Masoyama, we have a practical roadmap. How you use it is your choice. The only certainty is that we all must choose sooner or later to accept the responsibility of a spiritual life. Why wait? In India, they say, know it now or know it in 1,000 lifetimes. The choice is yours. It's a long wait, 1,000 lifetimes. Budo karate, according to Sensei, is first and foremost a spiritual quest. The goal of shugyo in all its forms is one: gaining control of the wild fluctuations of the mind and focusing that calm mental energy on practices which provide a shortcut to the liberation of the soul from the prison of flesh. In the 11 mottos, we find a distillation of Sensei's teachings to assist us with our own shugyo. It is a lifelong pursuit. It is not something we do for a short period, then rest. As the last line of the Dojo Kun also reminds us, and that line in Japanese, Shogai no shugyo karate no michi ni tsuji Kyokushin no michi o matto suru koto, which, as we know, means all our lives, through the discipline of karate, we will seek to fulfill the true meaning of the Kyokushin way. That line reminds us that karate is shugyo, for life. And through that shugyo, we will finally realize the true meaning of the ultimate way, the deepest, profoundest meaning of life. It is very beautiful. Once, on the occasion of the entry of some new uchideshi, Sosai said the following: "When you all came to be uchideshi, I am sure your hearts were full of big hopes and dreams. But always remember, karate is about the battle within, the battle against your own self. It is not about a battle against someone else. Of course, we train to be strong, but to this end, what is most important is to overcome yourself." As is always the case, the meaning of sayings such as these are multi-layered. It is up to the student to research the different levels of meaning. Read between the lines. Everyone should contemplate with deep attention the philosophical foundations of the art. As age steadily removes our ability to use the body, our physical power wanes, and all we are left with is what we carry in our hearts. Bushido, the Japanese samurai's warrior code of honor, has as its aim not pure physical ability, but also the cultivation of a sense of artistic aesthetics and the highest standard of morality and ethics. In this chapter, I have chosen to present my own translations. And it's true, I mean, you see little kids doing stupid things and you forgive them. Yeah, they're just being a child. And then you see, you have friends who are, teenagers whose mind is fully occupied with their senses, that how can they score with that girl there? And the girls are thinking, gee, I wish that boy had given me a kiss, or. And we just kind of think it's funny when you look at it. And when you look back on it, you realize it was just this passing phase of life. But the saddest thing is when you see people, particularly when they got black belts around their waist, who should know better, who have advanced in age, their 40s, 50s, 60s, sometimes even, and they still haven't got fundamental control of their instincts of life. They're still checking out girls and they're still doing crazy things, and they're still not able. You hear stories all the time about people in positions of responsibility, who get in trouble for not being able to control themselves for 5 minutes. It's the saddest thing, and it means they've completely missed out on the spiritual purpose of life. But anyway, let me read these 11 mottos, and then my translation that I said. I won't read the Japanese version, there's no point. I'll just read the English version. 1, and I'm really keen to hear some feedback too and conversations. And whilst I think of it, if you haven't subscribed, do so. Hit the bell, the old 1, 2, hit the bell, subscribe. And if you're already subscribed, leave a comment and a like. The 1, 2. And Patreon family, thank you very much. Gosh, you have no idea. As this COVID goes on and on and on, and the dojos were back at training, but they're a fraction of the size they used to be. So your kind support of what I'm doing is really, really wonderful. And if you're not a Patreon member and you feel like you think what I'm doing is a worthwhile contribution to the world of Kyokushin, we'll get along and share some love. I really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. Okay, the first 11 of the 11 mottos. The martial way begins and ends with courtesy. Therefore, be properly and genuinely courteous at all times. Following the martial way is like scaling a cliff. Continue upwards without rest. It demands absolute and unfaltering devotion to the task at hand. And that's really true as you get older, because as you get older, the body wanes. We talked about this on Monday. A lot of people think, well, I can't train, my knees are gone, my hips are gone, I'll just stop. But really, at the end of the day, you've got so much more that you can do even after your body starts to age. So on Monday, we spoke about that and how to respect the passing of age and how to pay attention to the changes in your body, because your body does change. And if you don't pay attention, you're doing stuff that you think you're doing it the same way you were in your 20s. In your 30s, it's different. In your 40s, it's different. 50s, 60s. It just gets worse and worse. So you need to have someone to video you, or you need someone trustworthy whose opinion you honor and trust, and you say to them, watch me and tear me to pieces and tell me what I'm doing wrong. And you'll be surprised the differences in what you're actually doing and what you think you're doing. 3, strive to seize the initiative in all things, at all the time guarding against actions stemming from selfish animosity or thoughtlessness. Now, that was actually interesting, that third one. That's in response to a comment, a very famous quote from Funakoshi Gichin, karate ni sente nashi, which is usually translated as there is no initial strike in karate. Sente means the first strike or the preemptive strike. Sosai, but the problem with that phrase is in Japanese, just as the word preemptive strike in English can mean 1,000 different things. A preemptive strike, a ballistic missile preemptive strike, a negotiation over a courtroom preemptive strike. Well, the same in sente, the phrase sente in Japanese doesn't just mean the first attack. It also actually means taking the initiative. So it's also, and so in the Japanese version of this, Sosai says, Buno michi ni oite, so in the martial arts, subete ni sente ari. So subete, in all things. And Funakoshi Gichin said, karate ni sente nashi. But Sosai is very adamant, subete ni sente ari, which means in all things there is sente, or there is taking the initiative. Shikaredomo, but shito nashi. There is no selfishness involved in it. So the translation I came up with, strive to seize the initiative in all things, all the time guarding against actions stemming from selfish animosity or thoughtlessness. And I think that's really, I really think it's very, very important to see the difference between sente ari, sente nashi, with sente or without sente, and understand why actually both of them are quite valid if you look at the different translations of the word. 4, even for the martial artist, the place of money cannot be ignored, yet one should be careful never to become attached to it. So also I used to say, kane ni dore naruna. Dore is a slave. And he used to say, don't become a slave to money. And I find that quite amusing now, because you look at some of the organizations in Kyokushin and the way that the people at the top have just blatantly become slaves to money, because, you know, gradings can cost thousands and thousands because they owe debt and things like this, you know, because they started to live well beyond their means. Usrad, welcome from Hiroshima. The student's introduction to karate is through the lens of winning, of beating others. How then do they change their thinking? Who is their example, their coach? Yeah, I don't know whether you're asking me or are you just, is that a rhetorical question, Mike? Because it's a really good point. And the point is that I think the best coach is your own heart and your own inner experience. Because if a student, as Mike mentions there, if a student's introduction to karate is through the lens of winning, and it happens so often, I mean, some karate schools are just about winning tournaments, but it comes to a point where one day you have to think, you know, I've achieved everything here and I'm not happy, or I've achieved everything here, what's next? You know, that's always the golden question. Where am I from? Where am I going? Why am I here? What am I doing about it? You know? So I think what happens is, yeah, that's a big thing. And this is, I can see what your point is now, the difference. And in some fighting arts, even, like boxers don't call their instructor a sensei, they call them a trainer or a coach. BJJ, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu too, they'll call their instructor, in Brazilian, they'll call their instructor professor, which is teacher. I guess it's an attempt to be equivalent to sensei. But most of the time in English, wrestling and BJJ, they call them a coach. Okay, because primarily, as much as BJJ, I think, is striving, they're trying to do everything they can to be recognized as a martial art. They haven't got there yet, because almost primarily 100% of what they're doing is aimed at winning competitions. And they don't have the etiquette, the protocols, and the history. And the early days of BJJ was nothing more than going around beating up people. And so now they're trying to shake that hit past off themselves, which is going to be pretty difficult. But so there you go. That's the difference between a coach and a sensei. Sadly, though, I think a lot of coaches simply call themselves sensei and think that transformation is going to be automatic. Oh boy, they're in trouble then, aren't they? Okay, but this there's an incredible story. I'll try to leave names out because it never really helps. But after the first world tournament, I think after the first world tournament, it may have even been after the first All Japan Championship. I need to double check that. But a very famous, very wealthy man who had connections with the underworld in Japan, and also connections with the martial arts world. He pretty well owned the Japan Karate Federation. He came to Hombu and he wanted to buy Kyokushin. He could see the potential. He went to the tournament and he could see, looking around, he could see, there was a famous story in the Bercy in Paris where they had a Kyokushin, I think it was Kyokushin European event, and an European non-contact, like what do they call it, the Karate Federation event, and they had them on simultaneously. I think someone arranged to have them on, and when the Kyokushin event was on, the hall would be full and people are cheering and going, wow, this is amazing. And then when the Kyokushin event would go off and the other event had come on, the crowd would go out and have a coffee and grab a snack and go for a walk. And at one stage, the organizers of the non-contact karate tournament were so angry, they actually approached the Kyokushin people and said, "You've arranged this. You're sending people out. So when our event comes on, there's no one there." And they're looking and going, what are you even talking about? The thing was, it was so exciting. You don't need to be a karate person to appreciate, when someone gets whacked with a good kick. And so after the first All Japan or the first World Tournament, I'm not sure which one. I think it was after the first World, in fact. Masaoyama was approached by this very famous personality, and he wanted to buy Kyokushin. I refuse to make comment on the grounds that it might incriminate me, as my dad, as Mike Whitten taught me to say. Is this the famous Burley? It's one of them. There was more than one, Tigray. We went over to one and fought the World Teams event there. I was the coach of the South Pacific team. There were 5 fighters. 3 of them were my students. One of them was Judd Reed. And one of them was, I believe it was Richard Rust from New Zealand, Tigray. But anyway, and it was a great event. We actually came 3rd in the world behind Japan A and Brazil A. We had a great event. But it was at the Bercy event. And it was at one of those galas where they had the non-contact and the Kyokushin. And every time the Kyokushin had come on, the crowd would go wild. And then when the non-contact had come on, they'd all go for a walk and have a coffee. So this man, whose name who shall remain nameless, wanted to buy Kyokushin, and he came in at a meeting. Sensei was there, Mrs. Oyama was there, and he opened a bag and pulled out the equivalent of $3 million and piled it in 10,000 yen notes on the table and said, "That's a deposit. I want to buy Kyokushin." He's pretty smart. Not many people could look at $3 million in cash and not let it affect them. And he said, "That's a deposit. That's 30% down. I'll give you $10 million for Kyokushin." And Sensei said, "No, And then he said, come on, no, look, take it, if you could do with it. I know you're in debt. I don't know how he knew it, but Masayama was in debt about $1.5 million after the first world tournament, because that's don't forget, he paid for and sponsored every team, every competitor, every coach. So it cost him a fortune. And this man didn't want to take no for an answer, and he had his underlings there, and he wasn't used to people saying no to him. And finally, Masayama actually, he knocked the money off the table and said, "What don't you understand? It's not for sale." And even his wife had said to him at one stage, it'd save us a lot of hassle. We're in debt so much, And later on, that caused a lot of friction. This is why Kyokushin wasn't able to use the Budokan for a long time, because that man was very powerful in controlling the Budokan. And so Kyokushin had to run their tournaments at the Tokyo Taikukan, Tokyo Gymnasium, which is another beautiful venue, of course. But it wasn't until, a lot of negotiation that finally they could get back. I think by about the third world tournament, they could get back and use the Budokan. And then Sensei said, later on, he said to his wife, she said, "Why didn't you take it?" He said, "How could I take it? I spend my life telling the students not to be a slave to money. And the first pile of money that appears, you want me to just bend over and say, yeah, I'll take the money." She said that the organization is not for sale, And the sad thing is, after Sensei died, with all due respect to everybody who deserves respect, and I say that deliberately because there are a lot of people who don't deserve respect, when the organization broke up, what you had was people arguing over money. And so often when court cases would arise, it was all about the money. And when lawyers would be invited to assist, even the lawyers would take a look at the money and realize, and this is what was amazing about Masayama, is that he lived comfortably, no doubt about it. He had that sort of body that suited tailor-made clothes, so he enjoyed having, tailor-made clothes. I remember his watch was not one of those expensive watches, whereas some people in Kyokushin just absolutely go ballistic over spending literally hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars on watches. I have one person in mind. Some of these people that took responsibility of some of the organizations should be ashamed of themselves, Yep, that's what happens. And this is why, and I can tell you now, another interesting, oh man, I'm going to get myself in trouble here. But that man then decided he would do what he can to destroy Kyokushin, and he funded certain fight organizations to take Kyokushin fighters away, pay them big money, get them attracted to it, and get them caught up so they couldn't walk away from the money. And sometimes those fighters don't even realize what was going on there. Yeah, I agree. And there's so many examples like that. That's just one anecdote, but there are many, many examples about that. If I have time later, gee, it's windy outside. You can hear the wind probably. If I have time, I'll relate to you another story. It may have been Richard Hood. I thought it was Richard Rust. Oh, no, Richard Rust was the guy that whacked me in the 87. Yeah, it could have been Richard Hood. I think you're right, Chrissy. Richard Rust was the guy that whacked me in the 87 Australia versus New Zealand. So by the time we had that tournament, Richard Rust would have retired. It's a good call, Chrissy. I think it was Richard Hood. I've got a watch. I've got a few watches. Actually, I don't mind watches. I've got a few, but I can tell you now, there's not one of them's worth over about, nowhere near what some people would pay for a link on their watch band. Like this one, for example. Looks like an Apple Watch, works like an Apple Watch, cost me $49. And it does what an Apple Watch does. And I changed the face. I don't know if you saw, I put a picture up of the face of it. Look at the face of it now. Whoop, let me just tap it again. I'll go there. Can you see that? Where is it? You'll like the watch face. See that? Look, my watch face. Very cool. But anyway, so number 4, there's a lot of people in Kyokushin who can really read that. Even for the martial artist, the place of money cannot be ignored, yet one should be careful never to become attached to it. It's so important. And I have to say, that's a Queen's watch. I have to say, not an Apple Watch, a Quince watch. God, Chrissy. Chris Dunn, you're a cheeky son of a gun. Next time I see you, I'm going to run. Chris Dunn is my sister's son, by the way, if you're not too sure, anyone. That's why he's been a bit cheeky. Not an Apple Watch, a Quince watch. Money is important. You think about it, you can't survive without it. It makes the world go round to many degrees. And if I had more money, I think I would have done certain things differently in terms of my training. You know, you can't train at a dojo without money. You have to keep the dojo open one way or another. And dojo operators left, right, and center have found the truth of that out with these lockdowns and everything. So, like also says, you can't ignore the place of money, but you should be careful never to become attached to it. And, you know, even the Bible says that the love of money is the root of all evil. And once Yogananda was asked, why does the Bible say the love of money is the root of all evil and not the love of wine or women or sex? And he said, well, that's because if you've got enough money, you can buy all the wine and all the women that you want. So that's why it's the problem, not them. A black belt from another dojo attended Shigeru's summer camp one year. Several female students complained that he was hitting on them. His punishment was to spar Teddy. Well, there you go. Amen to that. That's a good comment, you know. I mean, look, I think sometimes it can be embarrassing, you know, when you see people who are in a position of authority in the dojo, senior students, each privilege and each rank is a newer privilege, and each privilege has levels of responsibility. And if you can't handle that responsibility, man, like they say, if you can't handle the heat, get out of the kitchen. You shouldn't expect the next rank, or you shouldn't be that rank if you can't get control of your fundamental, you know, instinctive drives. Gosh, man, the number of people who have gotten themselves and the reputation of their dojo in trouble simply because they couldn't stop touching students inappropriately. But that's a different thing. Anyway, number 5. The martial way is centered in posture. Strive to maintain correct posture at all times. There's a lot hidden in that. There's a lot hidden in that because one thing a lot of people don't realize is when you have a good straight back, the energy flows in your body much better. And I mean, I remember once reading a paper where they did research where they got kids to avoid slouching. So they were monitored to make sure they sit straight while they're in school and study. And it actually had a beneficial result on their ability to absorb information. So posture isn't simply for fighting, even though posture is everything in fighting, because good posture means good balance and good vision, as Benny the Jet says, you know, and you need balance and vision if you're going to fight. So there's a lot involved in that posture thing. 6, the martial way begins with 1,000 days and is mastered after 10,000 days of training. So 1,000 days, approximately 3 years, 10,000, approximately 30 years. All right. So really, if you haven't trained for 30 years consistently, that's not 30 years from the day you started to today. It means 30 years. It means 10,000 days of training. You know, you can't have 10, 20 years off and expect to just simply go back to where you were. It doesn't work like that. Having said that, I took time off in many respects. I tried to stay fit and strong, and I do my kata, but I wasn't attending a dojo for quite a few years. There you go. And not just US, all over the world, Herman. Terrible thing. In the martial arts, introspection begets wisdom. Always see contemplation on your actions as an opportunity to improve. Well, there, and in relation to what we're talking about, you're right. You know, if people would just take a little bit of time to step back and think about their actions, maybe they would think twice about what they do. You know, sorry to get slightly political, but it's sad that Isami nowadays does not make belts, but only selected groups within. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of this stuff goes on. You know, I think, you know, another person who shall remain nameless, the way he tried to enforce copyright to control the cash flow of the use of kanji and kanku and everything, all it did was serve to splinter Kyokushin even more. So there are so many people that love Kyokushin, but they don't have Kyokushin on their gi anymore because they're simply not allowed, because they come down with the copyright, you know. But what they're doing is Kyokushin, and they love Kyokushin, and, you know, they've had no choice but to change the kanji. 8, the nature and purpose of the martial way is universal. All selfish desires should be roasted in the tempering fires of hard training. I love that one. The martial arts begins with a point and ends in a circle. Straight lines stem from this principle. You know, that's one of the most profound teachings, and Sensei wrote prolifically around that. And most people don't really grasp it. And having said that, I'm not saying that I do, but one of the best ways that I've been able to process that is to understand the principle that the difference between the line and the point is that, you know, in a fundamental way, an attack is the point, a defense is the line. And the reason is, when you attack, you usually attack with a point, whether it's the point of your instep or the point of your fist, or at some defined point you're attacking. But when you block, it's not a point that blocks. If I'm blocking that left hook, I'm blocking with the line of my arm. Okay, and when you analyze it through that, and then begins with a point and ends in a circle, that's a testimony to Sensei's fighting technique. If people say that he was like this ningen fusha, he was like a human whirligig almost, a human spinning top. And generally the interpretation between a hard and soft style is the straight line versus circular. So a lot of people say Kyokushin is a hard style. It's not a hard style at all. It's a hard training style, but it's based on soft style techniques. So everything is circular, bang, bang. You've only got to look at the way we do tensho, bang, 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 all these sort of movements. And then you talk to people about Sensei's early fighting and a lot of his stuff. You look at his book where he's talking about the techniques where he's going boom, even like Garyu, the kata Garyu that he created. It's all these boom, bang, these double techniques like this, the circular techniques, bang, bang, followed by the kick, spin kick, that sort of thing. It's very circular. It's very beautiful. And begins with a point. So that's the center of, and you can analyze that on a psychological level, spiritual level too. The point of that Seika Tanden, the single point in the lower abdomen, is the beginning of the universal power build up in the circular motion. I love that too. 10, the true essence of the martial way can only be realized through experience. Knowing this, learn never to fear its demands. I've been doing some soul search about this too lately, how important it is to, if you like, abandon life itself in the pursuit of mastery by facing your fears, you know. I visited the dojo who told me he had been training for 30 years. In reality, it was 90 minutes twice a week. I said there was nothing wrong with that, except he had a long way to go to reach 30 years. Exactly. It's spot on. And as an example of that, and take it into the fight arena, when my students started to fight tournaments, and we'd have the middleweight, lightweight, heavyweight. Sometimes there was a light heavyweight. On some occasions, we won all 3 divisions. On some, we won all 4 divisions. generally we won at least 2 out of 3 divisions in the national championships. And I remember one time one of the coaches, who was a really good mate, so he wasn't being vindictive, he said that it's impossible that these guys, that your students get so good so fast, they must be doing drugs or something. And I said, well, why do you say that? They're just training hard. He said, well, we train hard too. I said, well, what do you call training hard? He said, they work their asses off 4 nights a week and they really train hard. And I said, well, that's good, except that the guys in my fight team were training 6 mornings a week. 6 mornings for 1.5 hours was intensive physical conditioning. And then they trained 6 nights a week. Saturday was an afternoon, not a night. But the 5 nights during the week, Monday to Friday, they were all there every night. I even talk about Gillian Farmer, Dr. Gillian, who went on to become she was my first female black belt, but she's now the head of the medical division of the United Nations. She's studying medicine at university, 5th year medicine at that too. All through her karate training, she was studying medicine. She never missed a session. She was so well focused that she blitzed her medicine, but also would never miss a training session 6 days a week. And we had a dojo full of these people. So they were training 6 mornings a week, 6 nights a week, for a total, sometimes at night it'd be 2.5 hours, 3.5. So they're doing 4 hours a day, 6 days a week. So they're doing 24 hours a week, and the other guys are doing 8 hours a week. And they say they're training hard. And they were training hard. The intensity of the training, there's no doubt about it. But when you're training 24 hours with a goal, with a plan, with an outline, with a long-term objective in mind, it's not just 3 times better. It's more like an exponential factor. You're training 6 mornings, 6 nights. You're getting more than 6 times someone who's training 1 a week. You're getting 12 times. There's no doubt about it. A spinning top rebounds when it comes into contact with a fixed object, but it doesn't stop. Yeah, good point. And that's the analogy that Sensei also used to use, and we use it too. And I may have even used that in a technique on Monday when we're talking about some of the techniques, particularly when you're trapped on the ground and you try and get out and you can't get out because you can't develop the leverage you need. So what you do is you spin your whole body, and that spinning your whole body creates the leverage to create the opening. So it works not just on the impact range, it also works when you're close up to Ushia. My average time in Honbu was 32. There you go. For those that don't know, Rodney Whippenup trained at Honbu for 1 week many years ago, and in that week he trained 32 hours. Sorry, Rodney, I shouldn't say that. Rodney was actually an Uchideshi with Sensei for quite a number of months, weren't you? How long were you there for, Rodney? Was it 6 or 9 months? I thought it was one of those two. Let us know. And, that's quite a significant length of time. Accurate. 8 months. Good. So 8 months as an Uchideshi in Honbu is no mean feat. And that's what happens. You train that much. And you're right. I mean, this is what training was like. I was only there for 3 months, not 8 months. So the true essence of the martial way can only be realized through experience. Never fear its demands. Finally, always remember in the martial arts, the rewards of a confident and grateful heart are truly abundant. So gratitude is an attitude, AVC. Should that be ATL? So Sensei wraps that up with the importance of gratitude and confidence. Confidence because confidence allows you to keep moving forward into unknown territory. When you have courage and confidence, you will keep moving forward even though you're not 100% sure what's ahead. And gratitude is like opening of the floodgates. The more gratitude you are, the more the more gratitude, the more grateful you are, the more that comes to you. So they're those 11 mottos of Sensei. I'm just going to reopen that file. There you go. So that's the 11 mottos of Sensei. Where are we here? Any comments about that? I think they're a beautiful set of guidelines, and quite literally, it never hurts to have some guidance in what we're doing with our life. I think it's pretty important. Yep, you can do. I mean, if you don't love what you're doing, I don't know why you're doing it. I think there are dry periods, what I call dry periods, where we do karate because we really love it, but there are some times where it's just a journey. I'll do a little bit of an illustration. And the journey is vital because, look, here's my little thingy here. What happens is when you start, can you see this? I don't know if you can see it, but anyway, there we go. When you start, you get this, let's thin it down. You get this great learning curve. It's going up and up and up. But then it starts to do a little bit of this. And it flattens out. And you're not really happy about that. The initial enthusiasm, the honeymoon period of every time you walked into the dojo, you learn something funky and new, and it's exciting. And so sometimes you give up there. People give up there. But this period is really important. What's going on here? Oh, I've got my fingers on the screen. That's why. Let me just hold that down there. So this period here is really important, because to get from this point to where you go up on your next learning cycle, this is experience. That part there is just as important as anything. It's the depth of experience. And you'll know that because when you think you're not progressing along this line, if you face someone at this point and then face them again here, the increase of your experience will tell, okay? So this period here can be called dry periods. And those dry periods sometimes are quite psychologically overwhelming, but you just got to grit your teeth and keep moving forward, man, because that's really all you need to do is just put one step in front of the other, Xian, do you know Sensei's comments on the Tao Te Ching? He does mention Confucianism in the Kyokushin way, yes. And like most, that's probably a Koreanism more, because Korean is very, very much Confucianist influenced. And Sensei, I had an experience once with Sensei where he, Mike, no, shouldn't be surprised at the many sources of wisdom out there in the universe, as Heidegger said, or the Woodco. Exactly. Even Musashi compares fighting to the carpenter. There's wisdom everywhere. We'll watch. It's wisdom everywhere. Okay, so in relation to what Rod said about Confucianism, and Tao Te Ching isn't really Confucianist so much as Taoist, but anyway, yeah, it's like plateauing weightlifting. You just got to push through it. Yeah, I mean, it's the gathering of experience. That's what you're doing. But most people want that learning curve to go up. But the learning curve goes like this, up and down, like that. Once I've got a new T-shirt. My daughter is finalizing for me now. Boy, oh boy, I think you'll love it. And when it's finished, I'll show you. But I got it from the idea of it came from an interview Sensei had once, and he was talking exactly about that. Sensei said some amazing things, and he could see that even I was amazed, even having translated for him for so many years and having heard him speak over time. And this was after I'd written the book, by the way. So, you know, I was kind of used to Sensei's wisdom. And then this guy asked him some questions, and the answers were so profound. It's like my jaw he must have seen, like, wow, that was extremely cool and deep. And he said to me in Japanese, not part of the interview, he said, "Where do you think that came from?" And I said, "Confucianism, Taoism." And he just said, "No, it just came from the depth of my own experience of life." And it was very profound. And this is why Sensei can say that when you do koken, when you do the koken up, your thumb is in one position, but when you do it to the side, your thumb is in a different position, because the effect, and I've spoken to Rochelle about this, and the effect of that you can feel. It's really hard to explain. I'm trying to come up with a clearer explanation of it for Rochelle. She asked about it, and I can't put it in words, but I can feel it when you do it. So that's, you only say that, when Sensei says you make a fist, and the point of impact is your seiken, but the point of where you focus your body weight is a point between your ring finger and little finger, about there. For Sensei to say that can only be based on incredible experience depth, so that's what I find really profound about what Sensei used to say. Look, I was going to read another section, but if I do, it'll go too long. So I might just wind it up there, have a little bit of a chat if anyone's got any comments. Thank you for those comments. I hope that answered your question, Rodney. There's certainly Confucianist influence because of the Koreanness in him, and Koreans are very Confucianist based, their history. So anyway, if you've got any good comments, please pass them on. Don't forget, Patreon family, thank you very much. I love you all. I love yous all. But I really appreciate it, getting things done there. With regards to the circle and point, if you trace a passage of a missile from a sling to the point of impact, you have a perfect diagram of the circle and point analogy. Well, there you go. That's true. And in relation to that, when you get a marksman, you get a sniper who is able to hit someone at a particular point at 1.5 kilometers or 2 kilometers away, that's pretty phenomenal. And that's all about the measurement of the circle so that the point is perfect. That's a good point, Rob. Difference in the twist of the wrist from up and down to side. There is a difference in the twist of the wrist from up and down to side, not up and down, side to side. You're probably right. I wanted to touch on more on the principles of Taoism as applied or explained by Sensei. You'd have to read the Kyokushin Way, Rodney. I think Sensei's philosophy, above all, was influenced by Taoism and Confucianism, but primarily it was formulated in his own life experiences. And he was very adamant about that. And that's why he says that all the answers will be revealed through your own training, because that's what he did. He found that all the answers that he sought were revealed to him in training. Thanks, Marco. Look, that's perfect. That's right on the hour, so we might wind it up there. I appreciate everyone's time. I've got training tonight. Today's the deadline, and man, I've got some work to do. It'll be another all-nighter because I'm going up to see Willie next week to finalize a lot about the book. Yep, it's all about breath. They even take into account the curvature of the earth. Did you know that? When they're shooting a long distance, in actual fact, if a sniper who is aiming at a target like a kilometer and a half away or so, if they're here and the target is at 2 kilometers away, let's say, they have to take into account the curvature of the earth. And not only that, they have to take in the wind and gravity. And so, in actual fact, even though the sight of the gun will be facing right at that target, the sight will actually almost be like, if this is the rifle, the sight will almost be like that, because they have to lift the trajectory. Sometimes when they're shooting 2Ks away, they're almost shooting like 45 or 50 degrees straight up in the air. Pretty crazy. Good to see you, Mike Lorden. Thanks for coming along. Well, Taoism is just, it's a Chinese version of Hinduism. Their take on Hinduism. Yep, that too. They have to take into account the effectively rotation of the earth, the curvature of the earth. Thank you, Mike Lorden. Good to see you, man. Appreciate it. Hope you're safe there. Frederick, thank you very much. Dave, appreciate it. If not, other people train harder than the pair of Kimura. I don't think anyone in the world has ever trained as hard as Kimura and Oyama combined. That's a good point. Yep, the spin of the projectile, everything. Thanks, Paul. Rochelle, good on you. Mike, appreciate it, Mike. Thank you for joining in. And Paul Kniep aus Deutschland, good. Thank you. Stay safe. Thanks, everybody. Chris Fox. Thanks, man. Harry, Tigray, Leo. Muchas gracias, amigo. We'll see you next time.